Hello and welcome to the second installment of How to Date American Men. I'm your host, Professor Papasan. Now in our last episode, we touched on advice for how foreign women can date American men upon entering the country and some of the reasons why your typical American woman has trouble dating American men. Today's lesson is going to be a little bit different. We're mainly going to focus this on how lesbian women can successfully date American men. Now, I know that might sound counterintuitive, but I assure you, it's going to be right on point by the end of the show. So, let's think of some reasons why lesbian women might need or want to date American men. Well, let's see. Lesbian women have been around for forever, for hundreds of thousands of years. And they have always reproduced by dating American men. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, women from the Greek island of Lesbos used to attend the Olympic Games, which was a show of force and athleticism by men, more or less for the purpose of dating these lesbian women from the island of Lesbos. So the selection process there was obviously very high, above standard. So fast forward to present day, and we have this odd situation involving fertility clinics and cryobanks, sperm banks. So what do we have? You have men at the very top of the scale, up here in the 8, 9, and 10 range, which are frequently sought after by women here at the very bottom of the scale, in the 1, 2, and 3 range. Because otherwise, if you had women, here in like the 5, 6 range, right here in the average sexual marketplace value range, these women can still date men here in the 7, 8, and 9 range. They might not get to marry them, but men here at the top of the scale will casually date women here in the middle. But the men at the top of the scale usually will not jump on a grenade and date the women here at the bottom of the scale. Now, this probably wasn't the case in ancient Greece, but today, more often than not, the women who seek out the service of a fertility clinic or cryobank, because the men here at the very top of the scale don't want to date the women, the unattractive women here at the very bottom end of the scale. The most attractive men don't have to date these women. They can date the women at the top and date the women in the middle. So, the women at the top can have relations with the men at the top, and the women in the middle can have relations with the men at the top. But the women at the bottom of the scale are probably not going to be having relations with the men at the very top of the scale. But enter profits, enter capitalism. So you've got this situation where a fertility doctor, a physician, says to a man here at the top, "Hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of money. I just need you to provide me with a sample of something in a cup." Not coffee, by the way, but a certain product that is then sold to these women here at the bottom, typically for about $1,200 a vial. Now, what does that mean? Usually, when a successful high-value man here at the top of the scale provides his product to one of these fertility clinics, it's divided up, watered down into 33 separate vials. Those vials are sold off usually for around $1,200 a piece. So for about $39,000, a physician will take a sample from a man, split it 33 ways, and sell it off to, one woman 33 times, or 3 women 10 times, or, the same woman 33 times. The goal here is not to get the woman pregnant. That's not what's going on at all. If that was going to happen, the doctor would simply just stud the man out to the woman directly, and that's when she's most likely to get pregnant. No. This is a repeat business model. The goal is to keep getting this woman to come back into the office every month and pay, the $1,200 for the sample and the $800 for the service. So, $2,000 a month for forever, really. He can get her to fall for it for 3 or 4 years. I mean, every year that's 24, 25 grand. 4 years in a row, you've extracted $100,000 from this woman. And that's typically what goes on at these cryo clinics. It's not like a stud service where they pair this top level guy up with this woman at the bottom of the scale. No. The doctor just pays this guy. He can pay him a few times. Every time he pays him, he's going to get 33 samples out of this guy. The vials. He's going to split it up. He's going to water it down, freeze it, and keep it on ice. And these women at the bottom, they're going to keep coming on here and paying. Because for some reason, they've got something psychological going on where instead of just, like a woman at the bottom of the scale dating a guy here in the middle range, which is, the average guy, they think they need this guy up here. They're never going to date this guy. They're never going to meet this guy. They're just going to pay the physician to have this guy show, or they think they will. But it's extremely unlikely that will even happen. Standard medical guidance for women in their age range of 30 to 35. And this is what, we would call like mid-late cycle. 35 is what medically is known as a geriatric pregnancy. So 30 to 35, your standard medical guidance is 12 to 18 months of nightly heterosexual intercourse. And I'm going to say that again just to kind of reiterate this. So for standard heterosexual dating, I don't care if it's a lesbian woman, a bisexual woman, a heterosexual woman, the physician's telling her, hey, you need to, heterosexual intercourse every single night for 12 to 18 months, if you want to achieve pregnancy. Because you are at the very end of your dating cycle. Age 35, we're talking geriatric pregnancy, okay? And when it comes to age 38, I have personally never seen a healthy, successful child born, go full term, the full 9 months, and produce a healthy, successful child after age 38. I have never seen it. I understand there are miracles out there. And, a lot of people tell, we had a successful cryo pregnancy and everything worked out great. And then they find out later in life the child has some kind of defect. There's some kind of deformity. There's something that went wrong. Something damaged the DNA in the cryo process. And my guess is that moving forward, as we start seeing second and third generation cryo children, because that's what they are, this whole thing has been a medical experiment. Kind of like the German Nazis used to do on the Jews. They used to experiment on these people. And that's kind of how the community is being treated right now by the medical professionals here in the United States. Instead of just studying out this guy at the top, and studying him out with these women here at the bottom to produce a healthy child, that's not the goal here. The goal is to take this man's product right here at the top and to freeze it as an experiment, as a medical experiment, and then to sell it to 33 women down here at the bottom. And let's see what the long-term results are. Let's see what the long-term impact on the children is, 20, 30, 40 years later. And then let's try it again. Let's try to do a second generation. Let's do it to these people again. Let's keep experimenting on these people until, I don't know. Are they trying to attack a certain community? Because if you knew that just dating the healthy, successful men at the top and pairing them to these women at the bottom through dating, through stud service, produced healthy, successful children, then why is it that the established medical community and institutions have brainwashed these women down here at the bottom of the scale? And they really have, and I understand that there's a financial reason to do this. It's called capitalism. If you're extracting $25,000 a year from these women, that's a great business model. Get 10 of them on your roster. You're pulling $250,000 a year by essentially what's probably avoiding pregnancy. Because if you actually wanted them to get pregnant, you would tell them, hey, you need nightly heterosexual intercourse, and age 30 to 35, you're probably looking at 12 to 18 months of nightly heterosexual intercourse, which is dating. Now, whether, that's a stud service that the woman pays a monthly subscription fee or whatever, I don't know. She cooks dinner and the guy comes by or they go out to eat. I don't care about that. What I care about is that we have a healthy generation of children, and what I'm seeing in the community long term is that the cryo children are less healthy than their siblings. Now, where am I getting this information from? What is my background? Most of you don't know what a Facebook is, so I'm going to tell you. Back when myself, Mark Zuckerberg, and our goofball buddy Kyle Gordo, the comedian, you all know who he is. Everyone in the community knows who he is. And he does an amazing stand-up comedy, but he was a class clown back in the day. But anyways, back in the day, somebody got the bright idea to pay for our books and college tuition by working with the cryo industry. And when a prospective woman walks into a fertility clinic, she's handed a book, 20 years ago, she was handed a book with faces in it. And the book with the faces in it was called a Facebook. So now you know a little bit more about Mark Zuckerberg and what Facebook is, what it has always been, and what it always will be. The general community of Facebook doesn't know what Facebook is. They don't know what a Facebook is. They just hear the word and they think it's the social media app. They don't know that it was, this in a cup, and there was a lot of money involved and a lot of lesbian women. And of course there were a lot of children that, a lot of whom now have, they have medical issues that their siblings don't have. And I don't think it's the mothers. Most of the mothers are healthy. I think it's the cryo industry. I think freezing the genetic material is damaging the DNA. So how do we get around this as a community? How do we stop this from happening to Zuckerberg's children, or Gordo's children, or my children? There's got to be a better way to pay our college tuition. Because our children are now in this situation. They're the age that we were 20 years ago. So what do? How do we get around this? I think dating might be the answer. I think dating American men, even for lesbian women, takes the money out of the situation. You take the cryo industry out. You take out the capitalistic need to extract $25,000 a year from some desperate woman who might be at this end of the scale, right down here on the bottom, in like the 1, 2, and 3 sexual marketplace value range. And if you just tell her, hey, you can date average men here in the 4, 5, and 6 average range on the scale, if they knew this, if they had the self-confidence to do it, to go out and date a man, and to be open with their spouse and say, hey, you know what, sweetheart, I don't think it's a good idea for us to give a fertility clinic $25,000 a year so that we might potentially have a disabled child. And the disabilities aren't always obvious. It's not always Down syndrome. It's sometimes the things are a lot more subtle, and you don't see them until the child is in maybe their 20s or 30s, and maybe they have like something going on cognitively that you can tell something went wrong. There was some kind of damage to the DNA during the cryo freezing and storage process that is now affecting this child 20 years later. So, how do we prevent that? Well, obviously, oxidation and freezing are not good for sperm RNA. We know that. We know that right away. Sperm die within like 30 minutes outside the body, and oxidation is what kills it and causes it to go rancid. Heterosexual intercourse, there isn't that oxidation process, and obviously there's not like a freezing process. When you're dealing with a child that has like a cognitive disability, and this child is supposed to outlive you, one day you're going to pass away, you're not going to be there to support or protect this child. This child is the second generation of you, and they need to be, they need to be sharp, they need to be smart, they need to have it all together. Having a capitalistic industry that is profiting off of taking desperate women on this end of the scale, and then performing a medical experiment on them that produces children that are not on par with their peers and their brothers and sisters, is probably one of the greatest travesties of my generation. And why this medical experimentation has continued on this community, I don't know. I don't think it should be legal. I think it needs to end. And I think that what's been done to these men, these women, and those children, moving forward, I think there are going to be long-term consequences. And I think everyone who's involved in this and knew about this 20 years ago, I think they need to be held accountable. So let's talk about a case that our all favorite comedian, Kyle Gordo, turned me on to. There's a man in the Netherlands, Dutch man, John Jacob Meyer, popular European donor, probably 6'3", 6'4", tall guy. Not exactly ripped, but he's definitely. I would say he's right here in the mid range. Probably above average, 6 to 7. He's tall. He's intelligent. Speaks 4 or 5 languages. Got a couple degrees. Owns some businesses. He's got some money. He's a successful guy. He's not an Olympic athlete, but I think he checks off all the other boxes that women are looking for. Intelligent guy, smart, well traveled, speak languages, and he's a charitable dude. In fact, he's got some kind of charity set up where he does these donations for these lesbian women. And my understanding is that in Europe, they don't compensate the donors like they would in, say, Asia or America. So he essentially does this for free. It's like a charity service. So he provides the sample to the bank, and they then, I don't know if the Europeans, if they sell this to the women. In America, it's profit driven. But anyways, he's got a bunch of children. I guess he's got a couple hundred kids. And I guess recently, in the last few years, some of the lesbian mothers got angry with this man for providing them with which is exactly what they asked for. He provided them with a child. He did exactly what they asked him to do. And now they're angry. They're mad because they're not the only woman that has this man's child. See, they wanted to be the only man, they wanted him to be like a husband, like bondage. They want to control this man. They don't want him to have children to any other women. So now there's this jealousy thing. And it went to court. Big documentary on Netflix. I think it's called The Man with 1,000 Kids. But I think he's got maybe 200 or 300 kids. Anyways, it goes to court. The court fines this man $100,000 and tells him you shouldn't be having any more kids. Now let's talk about this. These women asked this man to provide them with a child from him, not from a man that's 5 foot tall, or not from a man that can barely speak one language, or not from a low-income man that's uneducated. They wanted a tall, financially successful, attractive man, college educated. They got everything they asked for. And my understanding is he didn't charge them. He did it for free as a charity because he likes children and he likes women. And I think that the guys kind of, that do this, they're family men. They like women, they like children, they like spending time with their kids. If that's not obvious, by the clown get up I get on here too, as the goofy chemistry professor. But everything I've seen about this guy, he's been a charitable guy. He's done everything they've asked for. And these women got angry that their children had half brothers and sisters. They got angry at the father. They're not married to this man. In fact, my understanding is they don't date him. They don't see him on a regular basis. They don't live together. But they're angry at him because when he dies, their child isn't going to be the sole inheritor of his empire, of his businesses and his assets, his financial success. So now they're mad at him. So they went to the courts. The courts fined the man $100,000 or 100,000 euros. Now hold on. That money is the money that would have went to their kids when he died. So they got mad, and they're essentially just mad at each other. They're not really mad at him because he gave them everything they wanted. They're mad at the other women and the other women's children. They go to the courts, and the courts punish essentially everyone involved by taking the assets away from Mr. Meyer that his kids would have inherited. Does that make any sense to anyone at all? Or has the whole world just gone crazy, or is it me? Because it sounds to me like the women involved here have lost their minds. Jonathan Jacob Meyer did everything they asked for. The women got angry when they found out that there were other women. He's not married to these women. They're not dating. He just provided them with a child. And I think a lot of them actually did this through the fertility clinics. They're not mad at the fertility clinics. They haven't litigated the fertility clinics. They haven't sued the cryo industry. They haven't sued to outlaw cryogenic storage of sperm. No, that's not what's going on. They're just mad at Mr. Meyer because he has children with other women. So because your kid isn't going to inherit, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 million euros, you want the courts to steal 100,000 euros from this man. And the courts are just going to keep the money. So now the children of the judges are going to get the money instead of the money that your kid would have inherited. That doesn't make any sense. What is going on psychologically with these women that now they're angry at the donors? And, I've spoken with some of these guys about it. I speak with Gordo about it. And some of the more popular donors, there's a radio host down in Australia, Mr. Hooper. He's done a lot of work on this, and it's going into the book. It's a good read. But there's something psychologically going on where a certain percentage of these women, they just hate men. They just think men are evil. And if I'm not mistaken, several American lesbian women have recently went to prison for torturing their son because he was a man. Just because he was a man, they felt the need to torture him because they didn't have a daughter, they had a son instead. There is a percentage of these women that have something psychologically wrong with them, and they hate men. And obviously, these women in Europe, they hate Mr. Meyer, even though he's done everything they've asked for. And he appears to just be a successful college professor and charitable family man. I don't know what more they could have asked for. There's a certain percentage of women, they just have psychologically, something's not right. And we've all seen it. There are women that are attracted to men that are in prison. And I don't know if it's because it's the danger or it's the fact that the man is locked up and he can't date any other women. Why he's locked up. And there's like something psychologically going on where the woman's like, okay, I've got control of him now. He's on lockdown. He can't date any other women. He's not out there having children with other women. There's something strange going on with these women psychologically. So I'm going to recommend, as I have always recommended, I will repeatedly state until the day I'm no longer here, 100% of the time, you need to meet the recipient or the donor for a date. 100% of the time. Anytime somebody doesn't want to meet for a date, something is wrong. Somebody is playing a game and they're playing it for a reason. Now, whether it's, the donor doesn't exist and you're being financially catfished by a foreign woman, we've seen that many times. There's a group of women in Pakistan that take photos of European athletes and models. They send them off to desperate women for money, and they say, oh, we'll send you a product of something in the mail in exchange for, a couple hundred euros. And they think, oh, well, that's much cheaper than I would pay at the fertility clinic. Here you go. They never get the money back. They never get anything in the mail, and then they realize the scammer was actually a woman. The man doesn't exist, Those are photos of some, soccer superstar. Anytime somebody won't meet you for a date, something is wrong 100% of the time. And at this point, I'm convinced that the cryo industry is one big scam to actively avoid pregnancy. If you were going to get pregnant, you would get pregnant through heterosexual nightly intercourse. Freezing the sperm and damaging the RNA is not going to increase your chances of getting pregnant. If anything, that's going to increase your chances of having a disabled child. And I hope the cryo industry lines up to litigate me, because I will fight back tooth and nail. I really will. And I will fight back until the cryo industry no longer exists. I will destroy the industry that created the problem that is Facebook, that myself, Kyle Gordo, and Mark Zuckerberg now represent. Now that you know what Facebook really is and what a Facebook is. Now that you see what things really are. A lot of these lesbian women, they're actively avoiding pregnancy. What do I mean by that? They will do anything at all, to avoid the pregnancy. And it's a power dynamic. You see, there's typically a submissive lesbian partner, and there's a dominant lesbian partner. Whether they ever come out and state it, or, it's just kind of implicit. Somebody's paying the bills, and somebody's kind of, using the other person. And what frequently happens is once a child is born, right around age 5, the child's going to go to school, they're going to come home, they're going to start asking about their father. They want to see their father, they want to know about their brothers and sisters, and this creates this tension in this lesbian relationship. You see, both of these are women. Both of these people can have children. And once the supportive woman who's supporting the mother, the submissive, who has the child, once she realizes that she's just supporting some other woman, some single mother and her child, she wants to have her own child. So they split, and another single mother's born. This lesbian thing, it's a fad right now. I get it. You're attracted to each other. You're attracted to each other. And there's no reason why two women can't live together and have children. But that's not what's going on right now in the community. Right now, there is something going on where the dominant is at all costs trying to avoid the submissive's pregnancy. She doesn't want to raise this woman's child. This woman is not going to financially support this single mother. And that's just the end of the story. There is no shortage of single mothers. Any lesbian woman, any dominant, successful lesbian woman that wants to date a single mother can. There is no shortage. They're everywhere. Just turn to your left. I'm sure you'll see one. They're everywhere. If a lesbian woman wants to date a single mother, oh, she can. That's like going out and buying a used minivan. They're all over the place. But most of these successful dominant lesbian women, they want to drive a sports car. They don't want somebody else's used minivan, and they're not going to date a single mother and raise another woman's child. In fact, we ran a survey on Reddit a few years back that ultimately got me banned from Reddit. We surveyed over 100,000 women, and 97% of the women agreed under no circumstances would they date a single father because they will not tolerate and raise another woman's child. And this is like a genetic thing. It's like the women aren't even aware that they're doing it, but they're not going to waste their time and resources on another woman's child because they want to use their time and resources on their child. And back to the lesbian relationship. This woman, this dominant, successful woman that likes to drive sports cars is not going to waste her time raising another woman's child. And like I said, it's typically before age 5. They just take off. They're like, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this. I'm not playing this game anymore. But leading up to that, prior to the pregnancy, what we're seeing is that the dominant will make the submissive jump through 1,000 hoops, but under no circumstances is she allowed to meet the donor for a date or have any kind of relationship with him, which is bizarre because every single day in the United States, there are male donors that have long-term relationships with their lesbian recipients, and they see the children on a regular basis. Both lesbian women know the donor. They regularly date him, and it gets rid of all this nonsense. You don't have to pay $25,000 a year to the cryobanks. You don't have to play all these games. You don't have this child asking the rest of their life, who is my father? Where is my father? Who are my brothers and sisters? When the child and the mothers know the father and maintain a long-term adult relationship with him, it gets rid of all that. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it was in Europe and here in the Americas for thousands of years. Mr. Meyer brought up something amazing in his court case. I was reviewing this in the Dutch courts. Amazing case. But he said, my children should use a heraldry symbol to identify that they're my children and identify each other. And the courts and the mothers were speechless. Because what Mr. Meyer suggested is what has been going on in Europe for thousands of years. Every royal family in Europe has a coat of arms, and they have forever. My family goes all the way back to Transylvanian heritage with Vlad Tepes. That's a long time. But it helps my family identify each other. See, we know who we are. We have that heraldry. And some of that heraldry came right across the pond with Tom Rolfe and the Powhatan tribe, Pocahontas, the first Americans. That's amazing, right? What a bunch of vampires running around America these days. So we know who we are. And Mr. Meyer suggested the same thing to the mothers of his children. Use our European coat of arms as a heraldry symbol so you can identify each other. But the courts couldn't believe this, and they couldn't really argue with it because this has went on in Europe for thousands of years. This is part of European culture. It always has been. The mothers weren't willing to accept it. They weren't willing to accept that our children are now part of this Dutch royal family. It's wild. It's wild. But when the children know the father and the mothers know the father, you don't have all these long-term problems because the child is going to grow up and every single day they're going to wonder, who is their father? Does he love me? Does he care about me? Why does my mother hate men so much? Why does my mother hate my father? There are just some lesbian women that hate men, and there's no way around it. That's why they can't go on a date. They don't have the social skills to sit down at a Chili's for 2 for $20 and talk to a man and date him long enough to get pregnant. They're down here on this end of the scale because they've got something up here psychologically where they can't have a social relationship with a man. And it is, ladies, it is not hard. If you just go to the gym and you diet and exercise and you can get yourself up in here to like this mid-range on the sexual marketplace value scale, 99% of men they'll go on a date with you. If you just take care of your body so you're physically attractive and you can maintain a conversation long enough where you're not like angry and you're like, I'm going to eat this Chili's 2 for $20 and I just hate this guy because I hate men. If you go in there with that kind of attitude, you are not going to have a successful date. Men, particularly successful, intelligent, attractive men, they are not going to tolerate that attitude. And you need to cut that out right now. So the cryobanks have been financially predating on you. And, any child you have from a cryobank, they're not going to know their father. You're not going to know the father. He doesn't know the child exists. And if you think that the cryobanks are limiting the number of children that these high-value, successful men are having, you are out of your mind. When they get a Tom Brady walking in there, they don't pay him $100 a pop. Every successful popular donor sits down with their attorney and signs a contract that is for 50% of sales. What does that mean? A typical single load from a man at a cryobank is split 33 ways, sold off for usually about $1,200 a pop. I've seen them go as high as $2,400. Let's say $1,200 a pop. That's a good average value. But a successful, athletic man, that's $39,000 when you split that 33 ways. He gets half that money. He gets $18,500 a donation. And if you think the cryobanks aren't selling those off to Asia, Japan, Korea, China, you think China doesn't have a breeding program for their military, you need to wake up. They see Americans have a successful, strong military. You think they don't want the same thing or they didn't want that 20 or 30 years ago? You were out of your mind. You were out of your mind. When COVID started, I got a call from the Chinese government warning me of what was about to happen. That's really weird. That's bizarre. It's almost like I have a child in China and they were trying to warn me. Well, that's bizarre. I've never been to China. So what are my children doing in China? You see now. You see what's really going on. I'm not going to tell you a view of the world that you want to hear. I'm going to show you the world for what it really is. So you can decide for yourself what's real, what the truth is. Jonathan Jacob Meyer provided a charitable service for hundreds of desperate women down here on this end of the scale who didn't have enough physical determination to go to a gym, to diet and exercise, or go on a date with a man in their range long enough to get pregnant. He provided a charitable service, his time and effort, and I think he spent a lot of money like traveling around to these women too. And the women got angry at him because he did exactly what they asked for, and then they asked the courts to steal money from this man that their children would have inherited. Meyer's children would have inherited that money the Dutch courts stole from him. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And I've heard some crazy stuff. The cryo industry is not your friend. They are not here to help you. They are here to extract money from you and essentially delay or avoid pregnancy completely. Your most likely chances of getting pregnant and conceiving a child are to go on a date with a living, breathing man and to date him until you get pregnant, or maybe keep dating him long term. And when you deal with the donor, you need to understand that 99% of the time he has other children. He might be married. He might have a live-in girlfriend. He has a life. He has an adult life in adult relationships. But he's doing this for you as a charity because he likes children and he likes women. And this has been going on for thousands of years. And for those of you that are new to this and don't understand what it is or what's been going on, just take a look at European history. It's all documented. There has always been wealthy, successful men that have had a lot of children to a lot of women and produced a lot of intelligent, strong, athletic, wealthy, successful children. It's like the king and his court. All of his sons are the knights. I don't know why the average lesbian woman doesn't understand this. But like I said, there is a percentage of women down here on this end of the scale that refuse to diet and exercise. They're morbidly obese. And they think they're going to have a healthy child that doesn't have diabetes. They're not preconditioned to it. Because the woman's got high blood sugar 100% of the time, 24 hours a day. She thinks she's going to have a healthy child. She's 100 pounds overweight. So she's going to go down to a cryo clinic, and her dominant is going to say, yeah, just keep doing this. The dom's not going to tell her, hey, sweetheart, I don't want you to have a child because I'm not going to raise another child. She just leaves her afterwards. That's what's going on. You need to sit down with your partner and have a serious adult conversation with them and say, you know what? Maybe it's not for the best that our child will never get to meet their father or their siblings. Maybe that's not to our advantage. That's not going to help the child long term. Because one day you're going to die. You're going to die and the child's going to be left here alone. And they're not going to know who their father is or who their siblings are. That's not to their advantage. And to have the courts litigate the father and to take away the money that your child would have inherited, that ain't helping either, ladies. That ain't helping. When Mr. Meyer can't leave his assets to his children, that doesn't benefit your child. That benefits the courts. They just stole from your kid. And you need to see that. You need to wake up. You need to see that the cryo industry is using you. They're extracting the money from you that would have went to your child. And apparently the court systems are in on it. So if you don't think that the cryo industry isn't hiring attorneys that are in bed with the judges in these courts, you're out of your mind. If you have any other questions about how to date American men, just refer back to the first video in the series. And we go through it. We lay it all out. 99% of men will date a young, physically attractive woman. A wealthy, successful man isn't looking for another woman that's wealthy and successful. He's looking for the youngest, hottest piece he can find. Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't date women over age 25 for good reason. Men want to drive new cars. They're not looking for somebody else's used trade-in, with 500,000 miles on it. Wealthy, successful, attractive men date women in their early 20s. They don't date obese women. They don't date single mothers. They don't date, women, typically women over age 35. There might be some pickers in age 30, but, in Asia, they have a term, and the translation over in English is leftover woman. And after age 27, if a woman doesn't kind of get her act together and get a husband and have a family, her family will ostracize her and say, all right, you're a leftover woman now. Nobody wants you. And it's not that nobody wants the woman. There is something psychologically going on today with young women where it's up here. It's not real, whatever it is, it's up here. And it's probably programming due to social media and internet and cell phones. Because we've never had those things before. This is a new thing. This has never happened in human history. So right now in the Western world, 50% of women turning age 30 don't have a child. 50%. So we're talking like 1 out of 2 Western women don't have a child at age 30. That has never happened in history. This is a brand new thing. And a lot of women say, well, it's just too expensive. Well, maybe if you didn't get into a bunch of college debt, you wouldn't be paying off college debt at age 30, Maybe if you would have just married at age 18, back when you had a chance to marry Leonardo DiCaprio, before you were a leftover woman at age 27, you had your shot. But you got brainwashed into getting yourself into a bunch of debt and then working for some big corporation until you die. So 50% of Western women don't have a child at age 30. And here's some hard data that we know for a fact. By age 30, 50% of women that don't have a child will never have a child. So if you're age 30 and you don't have a child yet, and there's another woman in the room in your circumstance, one of you will never have a child. So not every woman loses her ability to have a child at age 38. A lot of them lose it before that. So if you think you're like age 48 and you're going to freeze your eggs so you can have a child at age 55, newsflash and wake-up call. Because I recently had this conversation with somebody. They were serious about this. They believe this. They thought they were going to freeze their eggs at age 48 and have a child at 55 when they were financially ready. That ain't going to happen. If you've ever seen the movie Idiocracy, real popular cult film by Mike Judge, the beginning of the film, they show two different couples. They show a low IQ, low income couple, and a high IQ, high income couple. And the low IQ, low income man has a whole bunch of kids to a bunch of low IQ women. Low income, low IQ. The high income, high IQ couple doesn't have any children. For some reason, the wife won't sleep with her husband and get pregnant, or she's just saying it's not the right time, so she perpetually takes birth control. And then I think when she's aged like 40 or 45, she says, I'm going to freeze my eggs for later. Later what? You're not having a healthy child after age 38. That's not happening. But whatever. If you think you're going to give a bunch of money to a cryo industry and let them cut your ovaries out in your 40s, you're out of your mind and they'll take your money. They don't care. That's where we're at, people. We're in like the intro to the movie Idiocracy right now. So in the movie, 500 years later, everybody's got an IQ of 65 because the low IQ, low income guy had all the kids. And that high IQ, high income guy didn't have any because his wife was perpetually on birth control because she just wanted to work a corporate job her entire life. I don't know. From the interviews I've seen, the women in their 30s that don't have children, like 100% of them have agreed that it's not that they didn't want to have kids, just it never happened, and allegedly the time wasn't right. And it's not that they were, they weren't all homosexuals. There was, the vast majority of them were heterosexual women that were having nightly intercourse with heterosexual men, and they were just perpetually on birth control. If you stay on birth control till your age like 40, 45, you'll never have a child. And no one has ever sat these women down and told them, like, hey, it's okay to have a kid. You don't have to wait till you're age 45 and then pay, a clinic $100,000 to cut your ovaries out and freeze your eggs. You don't have to do that. You're not going to have a child at age 45 anyways. It's not going to happen. You think you're Noah and Noah's wife, you're going to live to be 900 years old? You need to think again. You need to think again. Since the Great Flood, humans aren't living to 900 anymore, unless we have some kind of major advancement in our cyber tech coming up soon. If you're a woman, my advice is, before age 30, you need to get your act together. And maybe Asia's got this right, this age 27 thing. I have no idea why they pick age 27. But if you're down here on this end of the scale and you think you deserve this, you need to think again. You need to get in the gym and get yourself on a low-carb diet. Get yourself up onto this end of the scale, right here in the mid-range. Then you might have a shot at, dating some guys here in the 7, 8 round. And I'm not saying this Jonathan Jacob Meyer was a Tom Brady, winning the Super Bowl. He was probably like a 6. He didn't look like he had six-pack abs. He looked like a fairly average, tall European man that might have had some financial success, and he was fairly intelligent. He spoke a couple languages, well-traveled, had some businesses. Ladies, I'm dead serious about this. You can date. You don't have to give the cryobank all your money and then have a child that's got some kind of DNA damage that grows up. So, maybe the kid's missing something cognitively at age 20. You don't have to do that. You can find an average man and go on a date. Now, Gordo and Hooper and I were reviewing some data out of Tinder dating service. And it's hard data because, we know how people click and they swipe. 80% of women are swiping right on 20% of men. So if this was 100% and this was 100%, 80% is represented by 4 fingers, 20% is represented by 1 finger. So 80% of women are swiping right and matching with 20% of men. So these 4 women all want this one guy at the top of the scale. So what does that look like? It means all the women on this scale want this guy at the top. Well, unless the dude, every one successful dude is going to marry 5 women, that's not possible. And as far as I know, typically it's, marriage is one woman at a time. Get in line, ladies. So they're sharing. They're sharing. That's how the donor industry works. You know, that successful, tall, attractive guy, he has all the kids. He has hundreds of kids, like our Mr. Meyer here. Women, you need to accept that. You need to accept what online dating is. It's sharing. Now, that doesn't mean you walk into the room and there's 3 other women with you in this hotel room with this guy at the same time. That's not what we're talking about. Sharing might mean kind of like a ride service. You know, like you order like an Uber from the airport and you get a ride. You're not the only person that has ridden that car. Other women have ridden that car. That's what we're talking about, okay? So there are going to be other women that have children to this man. And this isn't a new thing. This has went on all throughout human history. You know, let's talk about the ancient Greek Olympics where the strongest men from the Olympics had the children to the women on the island of Lesbos. Fair enough. These women had some high standards. They wanted strong, intelligent, successful children. I get that. They wanted warriors, you know. They were breeding Spartans, the best of the best. There is nothing wrong with that. The problems arise when women on this end of the scale think that they are going to own and control men on this end of the scale, and they will have them exclusively. You need to wake up. Ladies, you need to wake up. When you go to the cryobank, do you think you pay your $2,000, your $2,500 a month, and you exclusively own this man that you bought the frozen, damaged genetic RNA material from the bank from? You have nothing to do with that man. You will never meet him. You're not going to meet Tom Brady and say, Tom Brady, I have your kids. Love me. No. If you can't diet and exercise and go on a date, you are definitely on this end of the scale. If you can't work your way up here into this mid-range of the scale, you're not going to be dating the men at the top. This middle range of the scale is the bare minimum that these guys at the top will date. Okay, so back to the Tinder chart. We know the 4 women are all swiping on the one guy, and they are sharing him. All right? After a couple of dates, they realize what's going on. He's only stopping by 1 or 2 nights a week, okay? Where is he? All right, so this one's angry. Why don't you come over the other nights of the week? Oh, I don't know. I'm busy. Yeah, you're busy plowing these 3. That's what's going on, ladies. And you need to wake up. Mr. Jonathan Jacob Meyer isn't yours exclusively. You're not married to him. He is not your husband. He took time out of his busy day, and he's a busy guy. We know this because he's got a bunch of kids, okay? Spending time with his kids, spending time with his girlfriend, his wife. Some of these mothers of his children, he probably has relationships with. These successful guys, they will maintain long-term relationships with the mothers of their children. You think I'm lying to you? You need to think again. I've reviewed several cases with a few of the attorneys in the realm, and let me break this down for you and explain this to you in English so you fully understand what I'm saying. There are attorneys, financially successful attorneys, that are donors. So we get to review the cases. One of the most interesting cases I've ever seen involved a young woman who filed for state benefit supports. Food stamps, welfare. What happens is the state refuses to give her those benefits until she identifies the father, and then the state litigates the father for the state benefits, child support. This is what goes on in the United States. It's chaos, but it's also a European slave plantation. Welcome to the U.S. So the state litigates the donor. The donor hires a defense attorney who immediately files for paternity. So there's a DNA test. Lo and behold, the donor is not the father of the child. And it turned out that the recipient was six weeks pregnant when she first reached out to the donor. She was already pregnant. See, she had been cheating on her girlfriend. These 2 lesbian women, these 2 lesbian women, one of them was bisexual and was having a relationship, I think with her coworker, and got pregnant. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. Got pregnant and tried to hide it from this one. She didn't want her to know. So she tried to hide her heterosexual relationship from her lesbian girlfriend wife and said, oh, I'm going to get a sperm donor so we can have a baby. The donor was just the cover story. and maybe a source of income through child support. But, the child's born, the dominant lesbian who wants to drive a sports car, not a minivan, leaves. A single mother's born. A single mother files for state benefits. The state litigates the donor. The donor is not the father of the child. This woman was 6 weeks pregnant when she contacted this donor. Silly case. But we've seen multiple cases like this. There was a case where recently the recipient's partner left her during pregnancy, and after the child was born, she OD'd drugs. So the state takes custody of the child. Then the state puts the child in the foster system and then litigates the donor for the child support. Excuse me? This donor wasn't having an adult relationship with the mother of the child, who was apparently like a crackhead or a fentanyl addict. The mother of the child has lost custody. She's OD'd. Child's in the state system, it's in foster care. Why is the state litigating the donor? So the donor hires a defense attorney, and not necessarily wanting to take custody, but he's not going to leave his child in the foster care system. And under those circumstances, is he going to allow the mother to get out of prison and regain custody? She's got some problems she needs to work out. She has no business being a parent. The donor filed for custody. He didn't want to. The donors they're not trying to do this. And I hear this complaint. The women in this community complain, oh, well, the donor's going to file for custody and he's going to take custody. No, he's not going to. He has like 30 kids. He's not going to single you out. What's going on is you've got a woman that has no children, and she thinks that a man that has 30 kids or 300 kids or 3,000 kids, she thinks this man is going to single her out of like dozens of women and say, oh, I'm going to take that kid from you. He doesn't care, ladies. He has way too many kids. He has so many kids, he can't attend all the birthday parties every year. Okay, he's not going to single you out. He's not going to take your kid. He doesn't want a kid. More than likely, your donor has a wife or a girlfriend that he already has kids with. They live together. What's going on is you're seeking out the men at the top. Okay, you don't realize it psychologically, but you're down here on this end of the scale, and you're attracted to these men up here, and you're sharing this man with all these other women. Okay, he already has a girlfriend. He has kids. He has a family. You are sharing. He does not want to come and take your kids from you. He's a sperm donor, okay? He's not your husband. He's not your ex-husband. He's not your ex-boyfriend. This man has children. He has children to other women. Like Jonathan Jacob Meyer, he has hundreds of kids. He's just the tall, attractive, successful guy at the top that you are attracted to, okay? That's all that's going on. You are sharing this man with these other women. I'm dead serious about this. If you want a guy that you don't have to share, that you have exclusively, you need to date in your range, okay? So if you're obese, start looking for obese men. If you're financially destitute, start looking for financially destitute men, okay? Even if you're here in like the average range, like 5, 6, 4, there are men in your range every day. Now, nobody's swiping right for them on Tinder because we have the data. We know that 80% of women are swiping right on the top 20% of men. We know this. It's a subconscious thing that women do. They are only exclusively attracted to the men at the very top. Very top. They're not attracted to the other 80% of men. Those are average Joes. But those are the men that are in your range. So if you think in the back of your mind that you need to go pay this cryo clinic, you need to give them $25,000 a year, and somehow you're magically going to have a relationship with the guy at the top, and you think that guy is going to come, Tom Brady is going to come and litigate you for custody of your children, you are whacked out of your gourd. And you need to hear this. Every donor I've spoken to has said the same thing. And every recipient just keeps repeating the same nonsense. It's like an echo chamber. It's like all the recipients get together, or maybe they have all been programmed the same way. They all say the same thing. Give us all of your financial data and your name and address so we can litigate you for child support when my lesbian partner leaves me. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Any man that's stupid enough to give you his information so you can litigate him for child support when your lesbian partner abandons you, because that's typically what happens by child age 5. That man doesn't have any assets. He's like He's like an average Joe in here. He's not like super intelligent up here. The smart guys up here, you're not going to litigate them because it's not going to be possible. Okay? Does that make sense now? You understand who Zuckerberg is, what a Facebook is. You know, it's the book with the photos of the men at the fertility clinic. It's not their financial information. It's not their name and their social and their address. You're not going to litigate the men in the Facebook. When you go to the clinic, you don't know who that guy is. You just see a photo. Now, if you recognize, oh, that's definitely Tom Brady. I know who that is. Yeah, that might be true. But I assure you, Mr. Brady's sperm comes at a high premium, and he's got a contract set up with the physician there at the fertility clinic where he gets half the sales. So, you know, they take a load, they split it 33 ways. Some of it goes to Asia, some of it goes to Europe. $39,000, he's bringing in $18,500 every time he does that. So, you know, stop in 3 times a week. You know, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. What's $18,500 times 3? You know, what are we looking at? Like $56,000 a week? That's what the fertility clinics are paying for the men at the top. And they're keeping half of that money. $56,000 a week. That's what's going on here, ladies. And you need to wake up and see it. You're not going to meet Tom Brady after that. Your children aren't going to meet him. Everybody's been touting Elon Musk lately. Got 13 kids. Those are rookie numbers. Those are rookie numbers. He'll get around to it. He's doing pretty good so far. He's a wealthy guy. They say he's as wealthy as Vladimir Putin. $600 billion. We'll see. We'll see. But Jonathan Jacob Meyer did a real charity service for the women of Europe. The European courts have spoken. So moving forward, my professional advice to the other donors in our realm in this community is do not service any women or any fertility clinic in the Netherlands or that does Dutch business. So any clinic you work with, your product no longer goes to the Netherlands. We're going to shut you down. And if you think I won't, or you think I'm wrong, you need to think again. I'll go to war against the entire cryo industry. To think that I won't cut off the Netherlands until they reverse their ruling against Mr. Myers, you're wrong. And I'll assemble all the other attorney donors, and we will gang up on the industry and the country of the Netherlands. So if you're a lesbian woman in the Netherlands, what I suggest you do is you help Mr. Meyer appeal their court decision against him, because it's only damaged his children. It's his children that aren't going to inherit that money. That's all that's going on. The women who already have children, the lesbian women who have Meyer's children, they don't care about you. They're happy to see you denied a child as long as they've got their child. But they don't even have enough intelligence level on the scale to realize that the Dutch courts just stole their children's money from Mr. Meyer. You know, the child's father and their children would have inherited that money. So moving forward, my advice to my community, we don't deal with the Dutch anymore. If you're a lesbian woman in the Netherlands, it might be time to leave. And if you're a lesbian woman in the Netherlands that has already had a child or had a child with Mr. Meyer, why you felt the need to lash out and punish the other lesbian women in the community, I'll never understand. Because myself and the other donors in the community, we're going to push back now. We're going to shut this down before this spreads. You think you're going to hurt us and hurt our children and hurt your children? You need to think again. You think there aren't successful men like myself, any number of attorneys, or Mark Zuckerberg that have children in this community, this Facebook community? You need to think again. Even Musk has 13 children. This goes all the way back to European history, thousands of years. And that heraldry symbol, if you look around, if you pay close attention, we all have a heraldry symbol. You're just not noticing it. You're not observing. You're not being observant. You're not paying attention. You think Vlad Tepes's descendants don't have a heraldry symbol? You don't think we're not out there producing our own silver coins with our faces on them? You need to think again. So if you have any other questions, please reach out to me or Mr. Gordo or Mr. Hooper at the radio station down in Australia. Some of you don't know who Kyle Gordy is. He's, God, since college, that class clown has really taken off. He's been trolling Dr. Phil lately on national TV. He's been on Hulu, Netflix, and more recently, he's taken a stance with me to stand up for Mr. Meyer. But you need to pay attention. Moving forward, if we get some more light on this community, whether it be through Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or maybe even Jeff Bezos, if you start to see what's really going on here, this isn't 2500 BC in the Greek Olympics. This isn't the women from the islands of Lesbos over in Athens to select the Olympic champions to have children with. Things have changed. But this scale is still very real. And if you're down here on the scale because you don't want to diet or exercise or have some social skills, you don't have to give your money to the cryo industry, which is performing medical experimentation on you and your children. You can just go on a date with an average guy right here in your range. And I assure you, the donor communities are full of average men. There's not a whole bunch of Tom Brady's, on there showing their face. They do exist, but 100% of the time, you need to go on a date. You need to go out to eat with the guy, sit down, talk to him, make sure he's real. Make sure 100% that, when your child gets old enough, they're going to be able to talk to this guy, meet their brothers and sisters, connect with their European heraldry, as Mr. Meyer would say. That support community, those brothers and sisters, they will uplift your child in life. One day you're going to die. You're going to die and your child's going to be left alone because they don't have this relationship with their father because he's got 300 kids. Your child needs to be able to sit down with their brothers and sisters and depend on each other as a support network and uplift each other. And let's talk about what that might look like. Let's say one of those children is the next Mark Zuckerberg. And he's got this multi-billion-dollar company. Why not bring the brothers and sisters along? Take the family along for the ride. Why can't you have that family empire where, say, the British royal family owns all these minting corporations all over the world, the Canadian Royal Mint, the British Mint, the Australian Mint. We mint all this silver. It's almost like a game of vampires versus werewolves. And werewolves don't like silver bullets. You see the world for what it really is and who people really are. But Meyer had a good suggestion. Go with the heraldry. Make sure that you maintain a long-term relationship with your donor, even if he's right here in the average range. Because he might have a whole bunch of kids, and one of those might be the next Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk. It is in your benefit, in your child's benefit, to maintain a long-term adult relationship with the father of your child. Your child is going to ask for their father. You need to have a guy that you can sit down and go on a date with and call him up on the phone at any given moment and say, hey, little Johnny wants to talk to you. This nonsense going on right now in this online echo chamber where all the women hate all the men and they think that some woman in Pakistan is going to send them healthy genetic material in the mail for $300. And if you think that's safe, you need to think again. The things women are receiving in the mail are typically, A, they don't receive a package at all, and B, we've had some racial catfishing. What is racial catfishing? Racial catfishing is when a man of another race pretends to be a race he's not. So let's say there's a man in North Africa. He pretends to be a European model or a European soccer player. So he's using photos of attractive European men, and then he sends his product in the mail to European women. 9 months later, they have a child of another race that may have a disease, some kind of horrible genetic ailment or even HIV. That's what we're talking about, ladies. And if you think that's not real, there have been multiple cases. Now, once that happens to a woman, she's not going to hang out in the community and talk about it because she's real embarrassed. Because for the rest of her life, not only has she been catfished, but she's got to live with it, like long term. She's got a child of another race, a child she really didn't want, which is why she wouldn't just go on a date with an average guy. So if you think you're going to avoid dating, you're probably going to get a worst case scenario where the worst case scenario is not where somebody steals $300 from you. The worst case scenario is where you either contract a disease that kills you and your child, or you have a child that you don't want, or you have a permanently disabled child, which is like a thing with the cryo industries. You think that's not real, you need to think again. The women that are having these children that have these long-term problems, they're not proud of it. They don't want to talk about it. They're embarrassed. They try to hush this up. The cryo industry is not talking about it. Just go on a date. Meet the man for a date. Verify he's real. Verify his race. Verify that he's got some social skills and he can sit down and have these long-term conversations with you and communicate with your child into the future. It's not a joke. I'm dead serious about this. The fact that I have to sit down and have this video with hundreds of thousands of women shows that social media is really part of this. They've played into this echo chamber, and what's going on right now and what is now spread to the Dutch courts in the Netherlands. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that a charitable man like Mr. Meyer can't help out women in need down here on this end of the scale who don't even have the social skills to go on a date with a man on this end of the scale, right here in the middle. This is crazy. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. We are living in an idiocracy. And my children won't tolerate this. You think my kids are going to tolerate this? You need to think again. If you don't wake up when this whole thing falls apart, my children are going to march across yours. And this whole thing is going to end badly, but not for my kids. You need to wake up right now. You think my children in the Chinese military are going to stand back and do nothing? No. No. They will roll across your children until your family's heritage doesn't exist anymore. And if you don't wake up, there won't be another mistake. This will be your final. So you need to get real, and you need to get real quick. What is going on now has happened before. And I don't need to throw out names like Genghis Khan to remind any of you. I'm not the first Genghis Khan in Asia. There was another one before me, and he changed Asia in a good way. Asia has a bit of a problem with, I think in the West we use the term interbreeding. So many people are distantly related. There's only one cure for that, and it's to bring in an outsider that has desirable traits to fill the genetic gap in the code and to produce a stronger hybrid, a dominant Eurasian person. And moving forward, that will be your child's competition. So if you think that everything's fine, everything's okay, the West won't fall, even though it's in trillions of dollars and euros of debt, you're mistaken. You're mistaken, and it's your children who will suffer. If you think my children aren't planning and actively changing the world right now, you're wrong. And if you think that men like Mr. Meyer, Mr. Hooper, Mr. Gordy are going to sit back and let their children get exterminated, you're wrong again. We can work together. We can work all of this out. It doesn't have to be an idiocracy for everyone. We don't have to let that happen. But if you keep going to the clinics and letting them experiment on you, you're going to have problems long term. And you might not be around for them. It'll be your child's problem. Women in this range can date men up here. You don't have to date down. Women usually, they date up. But if you're down here because you refuse to diet and exercise or go on a date, you're probably going to be range bound. You understand what I'm saying? If you want to move up in your dating options, self-improvement, ladies, it works. You might even be able to date a guy up here in this range, at least short term. I'm not going to say he's going to marry you, but you might be able to produce this child that's a 10 out of 10. Like a miracle child, like the next Eurasian superhuman. They're born every day, but for some reason this topic is taboo and people aren't allowed to talk about it. It's sad because it's nothing new. It's not something that hasn't went on for thousands of years. There is no reason that lesbian women can't sit down together, have this discussion, and choose the best long-term viable option for their child. And it doesn't have to be a secret. You don't have to cheat on each other. You don't have to have these extramarital affairs. Two lesbian women can go on a date with one man. They can go out to Chili's and sit down and talk and laugh and go to the beach, go on vacation together. They can raise a child together. This has went on for thousands of years. This is not a new phenomenon. This is not a modern American family. But if you keep playing around in that social media echo chamber where there's a bunch of plants from the cryo industry, I assure you, the women in those social media echo chambers that are parroting this nonsense are working in the cryo industry. In fact, it's frequently the physicians and staff at the cryo industry that are promoting the cryo industry. They want the business. They tell the donors, come on in for come on in for a sperm evaluation, a sperm check, a motility, whatever. Well, let's see. A man that has dozens of children, do you think he needs to go down to a cryo bank and pay them for like a motility? No, he doesn't need to do that. He already has kids. And the woman demanding, hey, could you go down and go down and in a cup and get me like a motility? No, I don't need to do this. See, I already have kids. It's you that don't have any. I already have lots of children. You don't have the children. You need me. I don't need to go pay anybody anything for anything. I don't need to do that. I have kids. I'm successful. I've got a bunch of kids. I don't need to go down to the cryo industry and pay them for the service they're trying to sell you. It's a marketing gimmick. It's a scam. They're scamming you into paying them. And now they're trying to scam you into me paying them. I'm not paying them. They can pay me $19,000 a load, okay? And they can sell it to you in Asia and Europe for $19,000 because they're going to get about, $38,000 total. It's a scam, ladies. Cryo industry wants your money. In fact, if you just go down there and give them their money, give them your money, they'll shut up. They won't even do the service. They won't even be like, oh, we're going to cut your ovaries out and freeze your eggs till you're 55. They won't do all that. Just give them your money and they'll shut up. Or better yet, just don't talk to them. Save your money for your child. Your child's going to need that money. Buy a house, buy a car, take the kid to school, take them on vacation, take them to see their father. They're going to want to see their father. Stop giving your money to the physician at the cryo industry. And if you're the physician or the staff at the cryo industry, you got a problem with me, I hope you do. I hope you do. Because me and the other donors that are attorneys, we're going to destroy you. This is going to be the end of human experimentation. There's not going to be any more cryo children when we're done. You're not going to experiment on us, experiment on our kids anymore. We're not going to have any more disabled children, anyone with any cognitive deficiencies. Because my children in Asia, they don't care. They're going to march over you. They're going to vaporize you. So you need to wake up. If you want strong, healthy children in this country, in Europe, in the West, you need to get your act together. And you can go on a date. Date the man until you get pregnant. No more scientific experimentation. We don't need to play we don't need to play Nazis experimenting on Jews. All right. We've done that. That was 80 years ago, 90 years ago. We don't need to do that anymore. We don't need to experiment on the lesbian community. It's not necessary. Doesn't need to happen. Lesbian women, you need to be open with each other. Say, hey, I want a kid. Well, if the other one doesn't, all right, part ways. Don't hang around and try to prevent her from getting pregnant and then abandon her while she's pregnant. Don't abandon her after the child's born. Don't abandon her when the child turns age 5. You need to be open with each other. And if you're submissive, you need to sit down with your dom and get straight with her. Say, hey, I want a kid. And if you don't, we're parting ways. Don't wait till she abandons you while you're pregnant. Don't wait till she abandons you after the kid's born. Don't wait till the kid turns 5 and asks for the father, for her to be. Kid's going to ask for the father. Kid's going to see the father. That's not possible with the cryobanks. Don't go down there. Don't give them your money. Stop wasting your money on these physicians that are experimenting on you and your kids. You don't need to do that. If you don't believe me, call Hooper. Listen to his radio show. He's got 80 episodes. Call Laura High, the cryo girl. Yeah, call her. She'll tell you the same thing. They're experimenting, and it's for profit. It's not a joke. It destroys families. They're ruining people's lives. So if you're a lesbian woman and you want a kid, go on a date. This isn't a joke. It's your child's future. And it's going to be the future of your country. And you think I'm joking? You need to go to the Netherlands. And you need to see what me and the other donors are about to do, because we're going to cut you off. You think you're going to play games with us? Yeah. Let me know how that works out for you long term.